hopefully more people will file in. But I think we should probably get started as we'll try and end around 7:30. So the plan is that we'll get to any Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll get to those when there's about 10 minutes left till 7:30. But basically, welcome everybody to the TAP Guide to Internships. My name is Andrew Yildizlar, and I'm the vocational chair. And I'd like to just introduce a brief description basically on what TAP is. So we are the Turkish American Professionals, and basically after TCA shut down its office in DC, a couple of us fellow past interns of TCA wanted to keep the Turkish American community alive and going strong, and sort of work off of what TCA was doing, but maybe in a more personal way, and trying to build a stronger network of Turkish American professionals. And so that is really what we're trying to do. And as the vocational chair, that is mainly my job, is to connect Turkish Americans with others in their own respective fields, and as well as to work on resume development. And we're going to touch on that a little bit as well in this event. But we have two great panelists today, Yenal Kucuker and Meryem Uzumcu, and both have plenty of experience with internships, and as well as actual career experience as well. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and if you guys could just give a brief description on your career experiences, and as well your affiliation with the Turkish American community, that'd be great. And then from there, we'll go into the questions.
I'm you first.
Okay.
Ladies first.
So I'm Meryem Uzumcu. I'm currently a program associate for partnerships at an organization in New York City called New Women New Yorkers. We help connect immigrant women to meaningful job opportunities in the New York City and tri-state area. And my role there is mainly to connect women with professional opportunities in companies that will lead to long-term meaningful employment. So we have partnerships currently with Google, with LinkedIn, that will host workshops and sessions to kind of talk about what does it mean to online network? What does that look like? And then we also have smaller sessions with burgeoning startup companies in the area, to really familiarize immigrant women who usually have never had a job experience in the city with first-time employment opportunities. Before that, I graduated from NYU in a master's in Near Eastern Studies, and I also graduated from Rutgers with a BA in Planning on Public Policy and Women's and Gender Studies and Middle East Studies. I'll leave it there. Oh, I should actually just say my affiliation with TAP is I met Andrew, Murat, and Cenk through an internship program with the Turkish Coalition of America. It was a very supportive network that actually placed me in my first virtual internship with the Middle East Institute. And from there, I think I was able to secure long-term employment. So it's really important to me.
All right, I guess that's my turn now, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yenal Kucuker. As you saw from the flyer here, I'm currently with Verizon Wireless, Network Real Estate Regulatory Consultant. What does this mean? That means basically I'm part of a team that we engage local municipalities so we can deploy currently 5G technology wherever. Right now I'm in upstate New York. I used to cover upstate New York, Buffalo, Rochester area, but currently I'm working for the Maryland market. So wherever you travel, basically, if there's, probably don't have a 5G phone, but if you do get one in the future, your network, so that's because of us. So I'm basically in between the engineering group and state government affairs we're coordinating our efforts to deploy and do regulatory work with the local governments, basically municipalities and universities as well. But I have a history, almost 10 years of history getting involved in U.S.-Turkey relations. I was in Washington, D.C. prior to this job, and I spent 10 years, which started with the internship at TCA. I was part of the second program to date myself. So back in 2008, I was an intern with Congressman Whitfield's office. He was the congressional co-chair of the Congressional Turkey Caucus. He's no longer there, he retired. It started with that internship. That internship opened up a new opportunity. At the time, U.S.-Turkey relations were a lot different. And I ended up working for ATAA, Assembly of Turkish American Associations, the umbrella organization. They had a partnership with TCA at the time, and we ran a grassroots program called TABAN, T-A-B-A-N, Turkish American Broad Advocacy Network, for almost 3 years. And I traveled 24, 25 states, getting together with Turkish American community members and establishing a grassroots movement, basically, at the time, with the Turkish American communities in different parts of the country. And after that, I worked for the Voice of America Turkish Service, which is a government agency run by the, sort of funded by the State Department, I should say, for 2 years. And I wrote stories and interviewed people, utilized some of my background in Turkish American community here. That opened up another door. Then I got involved in Turkish Heritage Organization, which is a startup organization, and some of you are probably familiar with, and Cenk is already taking part in some of their activities, and I know he's writing articles, and I was the executive director there. So we started the organization from scratch and hired people, worked with people, and brought it to a certain level. It's still operational, doing good work. And after that, I basically said that's enough time in Washington, D.C. You need to take a break and get involved in something else. So I basically switched careers, but I'm still involved to a certain extent in U.S.-Turkey relations. I'm with the ATA board. They call regional vice president. So I'm the regional vice president for the Northeast area, and try to do activities with them. And whenever there's opportunities such as this one, whenever I'm asked, I get involved, and it's a pleasure to be here again, get to know everybody. And I'm familiar with some of you already, as I said before, through TCA. I know Andrew was a part of TCA's program. We worked together, and I asked him to take advantage of the internship opportunity. So it's great to see everybody who was coming from those roots, so to speak.
Great, thank you, Yenal, and Meryem as well. All right, let's get into these questions. So the first one is more of a general question for both of you. How did your internship experiences help with your career opportunities as well as with your current job? So if you want to go first.
Do you want me to go first? Okay.
Sure, if you want to. Totally up to you guys.
So the internship experience, obviously things have changed a lot since I've done my internships. Again, I did it myself. And during my undergraduate, I was able to do a paid internship. These days, at least prior to the pandemic, it was fairly challenging, I guess, to find paid internship. I was able to do it locally, and I was able to, it was relatively easier to find an internship to begin with, again, at the time. And I should mention what that internship was. I was working on my geography degree as an undergraduate, as well as international relations. There was a planning agency here, and they were looking for interns, and they were getting interns from the same university, from the same department every year. So I thought there was a great opportunity. I applied. It was quite competitive. I ended up getting it, and that lasted for a year. It was a paid internship. That opened up a lot of doors in the sense that, which I'm going to highlight throughout my conversation, to network. My idea wasn't just to do task A, X, Y, Z during this internship. I wanted to know people. I wanted to get to know people and get a good understanding of what was being done, what types of works are there, who's doing what type of thing. And it certainly enabled me to get to know the planning community here in Rochester, New York, and others in the municipality, which helped me, believe it or not, when I came back and started working in Rochester with Verizon, because I was communicating with the municipalities. I already knew a lot of the people. They were still here, those planners, which played an important role in our deployment plan. So again, things that I've done more than 10 years ago came back and helped me. So it's really important when you're looking for an internship I didn't just focus on the tasks that I was going to do. I focused on what kinds of things this would lead to. Will I be able to meet the people that I wanted to meet? Will I be able to communicate with those people, spend some time with those people? So that was the number one priority that I was looking for. Obviously, getting paid is also a benefit, but that's something that I really prioritized when I was looking for a job. I'll stop there and we'll continue later on. I'll give you another example from another internship.
Yeah, just to build off of that, I think Yenal makes a very good point about networks. I think also being able to keep connections alive, although it may have been a good work experience, it also should teach you about the jobs you don't want as much as it is also the jobs that you may want or the work environments you may want. So I think with internships, it was a good chance to just explore work culture and also see that if it doesn't fit for me, if there is, for example, there was an internship I did with the New Jersey Department of State for Children and Families, and it was a lot of navigating the bureaucratic channels of social work as well as services for particularly women in. I mean, this was a tough situation because I don't know if any of you have been to Trenton, since we do have a Jersey crowd. It's not the easiest place to work, and I think that just made me realize, okay, I don't want to really have a state job in New Jersey. I think there might be some other opportunities here. So I think it is good to get the connections from that. I did have a really wonderful director that ended up being very supportive that I could list as a reference. So although it wasn't a place that I was like looking to follow up and look for, job openings with, I definitely kept a lot of names on a reference list. So that's one thing that I think, Yenal is also touching upon. It also, what it helped me with was just disciplining myself. I think that there's a different structure to work-life balance than school. And in some ways I was pigeonholing myself in my master's, which was a very academic program. It was heavily based on writing a thesis and going to do your PhD afterwards. And I wanted to just stop for a second and, okay, figure out, is this what I want to do? Do I want to do a PhD in, the humanities, which if you look at the stats, it's not looking great. So afterwards, I had in January of 2020, so before all of this had happened, maybe even December 2019, I had applied to the TCA internship, and I'm so glad I did, because what essentially happened was, whether or not that internship was going to be in person and eventually it became remote, it was able to connect me in a world that was so virtual and so pandemic oriented. And still I was able to kind of connect in a city that has a very niche policy work environment. So that, taking any DC experience and bringing it to a city that, like New York, that also has some policy expertise, like you want to kind of have that experience and bring it forward. So I think I was lucky. I could not have predicted, a pandemic, but I think it's really important to start early, to just know, like, do you know your next step? And that's, I think we're going to touch upon this as well. But yeah, I think those were the career opportunities that had helped me most.
Great. Yeah. So you sort of, I think, touched upon a little bit of our next question. So I'm sort of going to try and, it's almost two questions, but I feel like they go well together. So what do you guys think, when is the optimal time to, first of all, start looking into internships, and also when to apply for them? And the next big question that I think goes along with that is, what is the best way to find and apply for those internships, particularly if you're lacking an inside connection?
Internships are, especially now with the pandemic, could be challenging, but I think it depends on whether you're seeing the glass half full or half empty at this point. There are definitely certain benefits. For example, it's a lot easier to communicate and link up with people now, because you don't have to commute and meet up with people in certain places and spend money to go to certain places. So I would argue that it's relatively easy to do that. But you have to, that also brings up the question, is it really helpful? For example, if you find somebody on LinkedIn and ask them to have a conversation, an informal interview basically, or something, to some sort of question that you want to ask them to learn more about, are they going to be able to, are they going to have time, or are they going to just look at it as another Zoom meeting that they're having on top of all the 10, 15 that they already had that day? So you can look at it from different ways, but I think optimal time to start looking for internships, anytime. I don't think there's really a time. You should definitely look, depending on, obviously, if you're a freshman, you can still look for internships. Doesn't necessarily mean, yeah, you should wait until your last year. Internships are good unless there are programs that you're applying for that require you to be in a year in your school, in your education. I would say don't wait, look for all kinds of internships, as long as it really suits your end goals. So that there's not really, based on, that's what I did. I would argue that, going back to your previous question with the TCA internship, when I applied, I was in graduate school actually, and some of my advisors basically told me, it's not worth your time. Why are you doing this? In fact, it ended up becoming the greatest thing ever. It opened up so many doors for me. It opened up my eyes, and my basically whole life changed. I wasn't really planning on being in Washington, D.C. and working for U.S.-Turkey relations. And I found myself in that profession and spent 10 years. So definitely, sometimes, as Meryem was saying, you can learn a lot about yourself too when you do something. That internship may say, you may realize this is for me or this is not for me, or you may say, I like this, but I want to improve and do something on the side type thing too. So it's really important that you look at it from not from a narrow view. Look at it as to how this will help you grow. So it's not just an employment opportunity. Don't ever look at it that way. It's always an opportunity to open new doors. If you look at it that way, I think you'll definitely have this. It will help you when you're applying for the internships. It will help you to find better or different types of internships, and you can cast a wider net, so to speak, so you can find better opportunities out there. Even with the pandemic, again, I would still argue that there's still opportunities out there, although companies are learning how to manage and do things from working from home situation. But since now we've spent almost a year working from home, I think they're perfecting that too, including my company, Verizon. They're offering online internships. I'll leave it there.
So just to quickly, we're also answering what is the best way to find and apply to those internships, particularly if you're lacking inside connections. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm just making sure. So I think just apply year round. You never know. I think sometimes, like for example, with the Middle East Institute internship, I had an in. I had TCA to kind of mark my to kind of back me up and give me the push, because I think that honestly, although I worked with Yenal, who's just the head of the Turkey program at Middle East Institute, and is quite well connected in the policy world and in terms of Turkey-US relations. I think she gets a lot of these types of applications to work with her, but to have the support of TCA was really meaningful. So first, maybe find a professional network that you can kind of rely on. I think that's super important. I think TAP, this is what this is what it's trying to do as well. I think also just keep applying and keep exploring. I think I had different priorities when I first started my undergrad years. I was applying to like feminist film company, one person type, in a Brooklyn office where I would just kind of come in and edit videos, and like that was what I was doing. And that was exciting because I could see how you can make a documentary on a very low budget and figure out, like, okay, this isn't for me, but this was fun. And then, you start to kind of check these things off and say, this isn't for me, but maybe this is. And then you kind of go into those experiences and lean into them. And then when you do find somebody that you really connect with, just like you say, like, just wish them a happy new year, keep in touch with them, keep them on your references list, let them know if you're getting, an interview that person, that company might contact them. Just keep those connections alive. I think that if you are lacking inside connections, if you have a career services office, I know that NYU's every school's career services office is very different. And this is where, like, it kind of relies on yourself to have to bother people, because I know Rutgers, for example, is a very large school, does not do the best job in being able to reach out to each person individually. But if you just keep going to their offices and take their resources, take their how to write a CV, how to write a resume, how to, network, all of these kinds of sheets that they may have in those career services. They may also have a mock interview session that you can practice with them for. You can also go to, any of these online groups for LinkedIn. I know LinkedIn has a ton of career service like platforms / networking opportunities / conferences. I think just really searching for something that you can connect with and rely on, ultimately, that just feels authentic to you. I think that's just the most important thing. It has to feel authentic, and you have to maybe just make even one connection with somebody in your career services office, in a networking, session, or in a group like this. Honestly, it's super. It's sometimes just the smallest thing, and someone might like even remember like what you said, and you just kind of follow up and email them. You could also cold call, but I don't know how helpful cold calling and cold emailing is. Sometimes I don't get a response to those things. So having like just the initial connection always helps.
As the old dog, as I said, let me share my experience here. I think LinkedIn wasn't even around when I was doing this. So when the job that I mentioned at ATAA, which was a collaboration with TCA, initially I was looking for an internship. And I was in Michigan looking for an internship there with the senator's office. And you probably heard this term contact tracer, right, related to COVID. So that's basically what I did. Now that there's a new term, contact tracer, I traced everybody who could be created, basically a chart. This is connected to that person. I wanted to know who is who and who I can get in touch with. So I started calling them, emailing them, messaging them, basically bugging the hell out. Well, not I wouldn't say bugging the hell, but in a kind way. And being in places where they are attending too, like took advantage. So the former president of ATAA was still active in Michigan, and there was a Republic Day ball that was coming up, and I attended that just to get to be close to her and get an opportunity to talk to her. And when I did, I communicated with her, and that opened up. While I was looking for an internship, she told me, stop looking for an internship. There's a job opportunity. Would you be interested in applying to that? Again, that turned an internship inquiry turned into be a job, basically. This was, again, before LinkedIn, but what I did was, as I mentioned before, contact tracing. I made sure that I communicated with that person, introduced myself. I'm sure they may be getting a whole lot of this stuff now these days. Obviously, things have changed. You cannot do that in person these days. So there's still a possibility I would say cold calling is still helpful. Some people may not like that, but I still find it useful. Even in my business, basically, emailing is not the ultimate or the way to get things done. Sometimes you have to talk to people, especially if they're old school. It actually, they may actually prefer to talk to you to get a better sense of who you are, what you sound like. So I would definitely recommend doing that contact tracing online using LinkedIn now. If there's an opportunity for you to be able to be in the same place where they are, take that opportunity, go see who they are and try to approach them and introduce yourself as much as you can. So take all these opportunities. Don't hesitate to show who you are, because sometimes that may be the best shot you have to communicate with those people.
Okay, great. So I think both of you touched on this, but the next question is, how can you tell, whether an internship is worth it? I think that can be difficult. And especially now, for example, if you were to have an internship, let's say on the Hill, where, largely before COVID-19, what you wanted to get out of working on the Hill is to make connections. And to make connections, that comes with meeting people in person. And especially now, with having to work remotely, as well as the fact that most internships, on the Hill, for example, are unpaid. What would you say to that? Is it worth doing an internship like that over, this summer, for example, where most internships will still be remote?
If you are financially able to be able to support yourself during an unpaid internship, especially if it's an online, I'm assuming that you can, hang out with your family and do it at the convenience of your home. So you won't have any costs. Obviously, it's not going to be like living in Washington, D.C. You won't be able to have the whole DC experience. So it's definitely a different experience. But if it's an unpaid internship, I would say yes, go ahead and take it, because that might be the only shot you have. And you never know what kinds of doors will open. Yes, it may still be online, but at the same time, you will be communicating with staff members there. And the relationships that you will be able to build, even if it's a month or 2 or 3 months, whatever that may be, may go a long time. The ones that I was able to build when I was an intern with Congressman Whitfield's office, to this day, I benefited 100% from that relationship that we were able to build, not to mention his staffers. I to this day, actually, I communicate and collaborate with some of his staffers who are in different places now, working for different government agencies or other organizations. So the connections that you will make will be can definitely take you further. You never know, maybe that staffer will have something else come up at some point and will notify you, or you'll see someone who's connected to him or her on LinkedIn or somewhere else, and you'll get to hear something, an opportunity that you may not necessarily be able to hear if you were not to take that opportunity. So again, I would encourage everybody to, because this is an online internship, go ahead and take that. You'll still learn things. It may not be the ideal internship that you're expecting to get, hoping to get, but nevertheless, I think it will take you to places and it will definitely pay off in the long run.
Yeah, I would say that similarly, I think it's worth it, but I think it also depends. I think it depends on what is the usual professional path in your field of interest. I think researching that is super important. I think sometimes, it depends. So, for example, I know with like a lot of perhaps, ad tech fields, like there might be a summer associate position that you would need to apply to, far in advance, maybe in your junior year, I'm not sure. Or for, if you're interested in law, there might be similarly an internship position that you would need to apply to before that. But generally for gov and like think tank and nonprofit internships, they might be unpaid, most likely will be unpaid, unless you have a support network that is paying you instead of that particular institution, which is kind of what I've had set up in the past with the Public Leadership Education Network, which set me up with New Jersey Department of State, as well as with the Middle East Institute, where I was set up with Turkish Coalition of America, where they're kind of overseeing you and they're really overseeing your well-being in that internship, which is super great because you'll have not only your office to kind of rely on, but you'll also have this network and you'll have like the resources that a network will provide. Similarly, what I do at New Women New Yorkers is kind of similar, because what we do is help immigrant women get into, for example, the insurance company business that they're interested in. We're doing something with New York Life and Guardian Life, for example. We'll set up an apprenticeship program and check in with our participants each step of the way to make sure they're doing okay. And eventually that position, although unpaid, will lead to a full-time job. So usually there's a pathway. And if you find a good network, a community that will support you, usually they'll know somebody or they'll be able to recommend you. And I think generally if you have a good network and a good community, they want to help you. Like that's also super valuable. So yeah, it's worth it, but don't feel like you have to go about it alone. and don't feel like you have to apply to just a bunch of internships on LinkedIn. Like there are usually ways and avenues that can connect you as well.
Great, Meryem, thank you. So this next question is actually for you specifically, as you know, you have your own experience with remote internships. So I know you already talked about it a bit, but could you explain a little bit more about your experience, you know, working remotely? And do you have any thoughts on the idea, you know, in general about, you know, remote internships in comparison to in-person ones?
Yeah. So I came in at a time where it was pretty unsure whether we would be in person in the summer with the Middle East Institute, and they had an orientation that was like, maybe, you know, we'll have you come in and you'll have to move to DC in the middle of this or something like that. That never happened, obviously. So it was really important that I was just in communication with both TCA as well as with the Middle East Institute to kind of figure that out, but also with Yenal, who was the person I was directly working with in this remote experience, to kind of figure out her communication style. So I think that's kind of the most difficult thing to figure out in any kind of remote work situation. Some supervisors want you to be very, very active, want you to update them all the time. Some supervisors will just give you a deadline and kind of do their own thing. And I know with my supervisor, Yenal was very, very busy and would give me just a bunch of assignments to kind of finish for that week, and we would have short communication. So once I kind of felt comfortable with that, I think it was extremely just useful. And in the end, I was able to just adjust to her communication style and kind of make that relationship its own thing. So it was kind of in its own way. We had regular communication. She would usually ask me to write reports on something that she would usually brief either State Department with, or she would go off and, you know, I don't know, she has a book that she's writing. So sometimes it would be a research topic on that. And it made me feel very, you know, just able to communicate and figure out how to communicate best with a supervisor, but also understand that management changes, and that's going to vary with every situation and with every opportunity you come across. In the end, she was super, super just kind and accommodating in allowing me to put her down as a reference. And she even recommended me to the National Endowment of Democracy's, I think they had an opening that was quite travel heavy. Unfortunately, I think they closed it after interviewing me, and it just didn't pan out because it was a very travel heavy position, but then they kept opening it again, and it was interesting. But I thought that they would not really care about, you know, my research experience of like a city in Eastern Turkey, Diyarbakir. I was like, no one's going to be interested that I did a thesis on this. Like, it's a very academic thesis. I'm going to focus on, you know, the projects I've done in Istanbul and the projects I've done in Ankara. Well, I wouldn't have been, you know, I think what helped me is because, you know, doing that internship at Middle East Institute, you do actually, they are, you know, they're usually, even though these larger research teams or these larger grant finding teams are interested in the smaller projects that you're doing on, or the remote, I shouldn't use the word remote because it means something different in this context, but I think it just made me realize, like, don't assume that you always know what people are thinking. They weren't interested in like, oh, this person learned Arabic. They don't care. They actually care that like they want to fund like something in Diyarbakir or try to help development in Diyarbakir in some way. So it was interesting. I thought that that the experience with Yenal at least helped me like research projects that are generally quite under the radar, and that made me kind of have some insight into what policy or you know, hot topics are being circulated in a particular DC circuit. So yeah, it was pretty good. I recommend it. Try and get one. That's all. I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you, Meryem. Okay, so this last question is specifically for Yenal. So how should one tailor a resume and application, particularly for students or recent graduates that have no prior work experience? Can you give us good or bad examples of applications that you've come across when you were looking for interns? Thank you.
For this information, for the record, I pulled some information from Verizon's HR to find out what we were doing as a company. So there's some information that's not publicly available, but I'll read you some of the stuff. So apparently our HR, when they're doing this, they look at job-related experience and skills. Number one, leadership and teamwork. Number two, communication style and results and outcomes. So those are the four important components that they're focusing on when they are looking at a candidate, basically, in an interview too. So when you look at this, and they provide additional information how to format your resume for Verizon when you're applying for internal jobs, and this is for internal applicants. But going back to from a broader perspective, if you don't have enough experience, what do? Unfortunately, there's this weird thing that everybody's asking for. Do you have 3 years or 5 years of experience? Well, if you have that kind of experience, you wouldn't be looking for an internship to begin with anyway. It's a tough, challenging environment to be in, and I certainly recognize that it was challenging when I was looking for an internships too, but based on what I'm seeing so far, it's probably gotten a lot more challenging and more difficult. It's best to focus on your strengths and knowing yourself, what you're good at. For example, I'll give you an example. It's my personality. I know I recognize myself that I really prefer, instead of spending time in front of a computer, whatever the project may be, look at an Excel sheet. I am a lot better than in-person communication, connecting with people in person, than doing something and perhaps in directly writing or looking at an Excel sheet or mining data. So if you know your strengths, make sure that you highlight those in your resume, and not having a big resume or shiny resume, it's really not of an issue. When we were hiring for interns and employees at Turkish Heritage Organization, again, as I mentioned earlier, we started the team from scratch. I was the first one, and I started hiring people, starting with some interns. I went through a lot of different resumes. I had to educate myself as to what to do. I read some articles and information about HR-related stuff just to inform myself, because I was in a position now that I was hiring people. And I came across all kinds of things. Obviously, there are certain core things that no matter what source you go, you'll get the basics of what to do with your resume. Although that could vary based on, you may show the same resume to 5 different people and you may get 5 different opinions as to what should be on there. That could drive you crazy. But at the same time, when I was looking for people, I noticed that the information, you have to be unique. Don't just tell a story and show something that is unique in your ability to, or you've done to stand out. Many times the people that I selected were the ones that said something very unique and interesting that stood out from the others. And that's really important. Again, being yourself. Sometimes you may think, oh, why should I mention this? This is weird. Maybe I shouldn't put that. I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. Yeah, some people may think that it's not beneficial, but I would actually bet money on it that a lot of the HR, when they come across something unique that they haven't seen before, they will stop and take a look at it again, reread it again, because it's, again, in such a unique experience. So you need to definitely highlight whatever experience you have, whatever qualifications that you have, and tell a good story as to why you're interested in doing this, and how this will place you within the company. And you may not necessarily stay there. Obviously, you may have different types of goals, but stating and telling that storytelling is the most important part. A lot of time, I still remember resumes that I read because they told a really good story. But if you're just listing things for the sake of listing, you will not remember that. But if it's a unique resume that's telling an interesting story, I will stick to whoever is reading that, and then they will go back to it and say, oh, maybe we should invite this person or schedule an interview for this person. So that was my experience with looking for candidates, qualified candidates. I wasn't primarily focusing on the background so much per se. The education is obviously important. These things are some of the core things that you look at. But at the same time, it's more about once you meet that person, once you communicate with them, have a dialogue. And when I was interviewing people, I wasn't asking these like really cookie cutter questions. We were having a dialogue, actually, a conversation, just to get a feel of who these people are, what they've done, are they capable, can we work with them, can the rest of the team can work with them. Those were some of the things that I was looking at. Again, every HR person, every team is different, but they're going to want to look at you and say, can we work with this person? Is he or she capable of delivering, doing the things that we need to be done? Those are the primary things that they're going to look at, 3-4 things. And if you can sort of package yourself and sell yourself, I don't think you'll have any issues getting that in an interview. At least I cannot guarantee whether you'll get the interview, but you'll get the job, the internship, but you'll definitely get the interview.
Okay, great. Thank you, Yenal. That was great feedback. So now we have about 10 minutes left for Q&A. So please feel free to type any question or feel free to speak, personally through video as well. Let's see. It looks like Cenk wrote one question. So Cenk said, can we talk a little bit more about the services they offer to current students and alumni? Also, how important is it also to connect with your university's alumni network? So if either one of you want to touch on that, that would be great.
It's important. I think universities are definitely putting a lot more emphasis on alumni network. There's professionals working in these offices these days who are experts in different fields, so they can definitely connect you. It's actually a business now, so you can even be a professional, focus on this kind of stuff. I'm trying to remember my experience. Actually, I attempted to utilize, I wanted to get the most out of these what the university was offering at the time, the career centers, but I don't think anything came out of it, to be honest with you. So I had to rely on my own ways of doing things. As I mentioned earlier, all the tricks, tips and tricks that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, but that doesn't mean that's just my experience. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be helpful. I'm sure there's other. Every university is different. Every office is different. So I'm sure there are tools and opportunities and guidelines that they can give you that could make a difference in terms of your job opportunities and job search and internship search.
Yeah, I think I only started using the university career centers, honestly, when I was at NYU for my master's, and I wish I had done it earlier because I only heard like in the hallways with the undergrads talking like, oh, I'm going to schedule a mock interview with Wasserman Career Center. I was like, I didn't even know this was a service. So definitely check that if your university has mock interview services, even if you don't have an interview set up, you might just want to practice, just hearing questions of what that sounds like. And usually I think mock interviews are almost harder because that person is really like there to listen and critique and give you good feedback. And you have sometimes less chemistry, I think, with a mock interviewer than with like an actual HR person or with an actual, potential supervisor that may be interviewing you. Mock interviews are amazing. They just help you like I was saying, like sell yourself and give yourself like a good 60-minute elevator pitch. It's weird to practice those, but that is like the question that I think I disliked the most was, tell me about yourself. It's like, that could be anything. you could start anywhere. So to practice that in a professional setting is super important. I think resume building, resume templates, even if your university is like not very good on selling or giving these resources out, NYU has a public one that you can, I think that you can just search and you find it. Columbia has a public one. They have how to write a cover letter. I would write like so much in a cover letter that was unnecessary and kind of frill it up in a way that was too, people are just trying to get a sense of who you are and whether you'd be good on a team as well, or whatever your job requirements may ask of you. But I think it's better to be conversational always. Like I think having that in an interview, in a cover letter, telling a story. I think that was something that, you know, I'll mention that I think that's what a lot of these resume templates are trying to do. Something, just because I do a lot of resume workshopping with some of the community members that we serve. I can definitely think about like sharing those resources afterwards. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
But the short, take advantage of all the resources that you have access to. Don't say this may not be helpful. You never know. So I would encourage you to take advantage of all the resources that you have, and fully, basically, and insist that you get the best, and meet with people, spend some time, whether it's your resume or something else. Yeah, take advantage of all the resources that you can. That includes, by the way, I'm going to say this later on too. So if there's anything that I can do to help at any point, my contact information, I'll make that available. You can contact me on LinkedIn or anywhere else. So I'd be happy to connect you or do anything that would be helpful for your career in the future. So don't hesitate to do that. That's why we're doing this event anyway, right?
Yeah, definitely. Same here.
Exactly. Sorry, Meryem. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just reading, when it comes to connecting with your university's alumni network, I mean, if it helps you and if you like what it's about, maybe. I mean, I know that like Rutgers had like a women's college one that was really good. That was cool. They really were about supporting their students. I mean, if you connect with it, I think that's where I will leave it. Yeah, do it. Just connect with as many people that you are authentically engaged with.
Okay, great. Are there any more questions? If not, I will leave, I think, Cenk had's final words for everybody.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for moderating. I think that was you were such a great moderator, and Yenal and Meryem, thank you for all your insight. I think it's going to be very important for people to because this is recorded as well, broadcasted through our networks. And I think, I mean, just because we have such a small, a small enough group, I just want, like, for people that are not executive committee, I just want to, we should have maybe done this earlier, but if you could just like say hi and like just what your prior connection has, what your connection is or has been with the Turkish American community. I'd just like to know a little bit more. One is I see a TCA veteran over there, Ella Elmaz, who I know is also you're doing something with like Turkish American like youth in Colorado. I mean, why don't you kind of like you? I remember that's if you'd like to say a little bit about that, that'd be great, Ella.
Thanks, Cenk. Yeah, so I'm actually kind of everywhere with the Turkish American community right now. Yeah, I was a part of the youth delegate thing that TCA did back in 2018. And then I serve as the secretary for our community, like Colorado Turkish American organization. And we created like a subdivision off of that called the Turkish American Youth of Colorado. And so we're doing like, informative events on like how, kids can get involved in the Turkish American community in Colorado, educate them on their history, educate them on their, like how to balance cultures and how to improve their Turkish, because a lot of the Turkish kids here have some difficulty speaking Turkish. And so we're doing that. And then we also kind of branched out and we're actually working with Yenal right now with not international, but like a national youth group under ATAA. So yeah, that's just to kind of like broaden, our network and, educate more kids that don't have Turkish American communities in their states and do the same thing and kind of get the ball rolling on their careers and, whether or not it is career oriented or if it's, more cultural and all that. So it's kind of what we're doing.
The last thing is a great point. I want to say something. If you can't find any internship, what you can do such things what Ella is doing, and you can show that on your resume too. You don't have to do an internship. Sometimes you can be part of an organization or create something to work with the organization and show that as part of the work that you've done and accomplished something. So it doesn't have to be an internship or something else. You can create your own path. That's also valid. In some cases, especially depending on who you're communicating with, they may say, this is actually great. You are very entrepreneurial. You started something on your own. You did this, you achieved this. So that's very important too. So don't think that everything has to be an internship. You can create your own path, your own internship, your own program, which can speak a lot more volume than an ordinary internship.
Thank you, Ella. And yeah, just and I'm sorry to put you guys on the spot, but I just want to know, like, Millie, you talked a little bit about it, but Millie Gasco, I see you. Just like to introduce you.
Sure, yeah. So I've been on those email chains, the communications of TAP. But my background is I have a master's degree in compliance and risk management and another master's degree in business administration. And I currently work at NYU as an enterprise risk management associate. So, there's not much that I can add. Yenal and Meryem kind of basically did a great job with providing some of the resources and guidelines and, tricks that they sort of experienced as they were going up the corporate ranks per se. Yeah, that's kind of my background. I just wanted to sit in and listen on this panel discussion and look forward to many other more. So if any of you young Turkish Americans, have any questions or anything like that, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm sure with the other panelists, feel free to connect with us. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Millie. And just two things that we've been talking about, I just reminded me, like with Ella, we are thinking about doing something an event where like the importance of being bilingual, importance of knowing Turkish fluently. I don't know if you know Mukaddes Shahin, Muki.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Muki, yes.
So I'm thinking about reaching out to her and kind of having her come on and talk about why you should keep up your Turkish. And so that's another topic. Maybe we have another program idea of talking about graduate schools. Like one was should I go to business school? Should I do a master's program in such and such field? Should I go to medical school? Like, so I think that's also in the works in terms of getting people that have graduated from those professional or graduate schools, and just kind of an interest group meeting for people. And we'd love to have you on there for that.
Great.
Rav Zachayr, are you on mute?
Yeah, hello. I'm currently enrolled at Florida State University in Tallahassee here. Elif Onay sent me the email. That's how I kind of had the Zoom link to here and everything. And I'm going to be a senior next semester. I'm in dietetics, so I'm interested in nutrition and health professions, but I still thought it would be helpful to like see how other Turkish people are doing, and just wanted to see new faces, to be honest. It was pretty insightful, I would say. And I really wanted to have an internship this summer or any type of like volunteering and stuff, but I've seen that mostly you guys were all talking about social sciences and more about communication, whereas I'm more going into like health professions and I'm trying to do shadowing in hospitals and everything. But it's good to hear about like the resume, because I'm also renewing my resume to apply to volunteerings and like internships and everything. But it's so hard after COVID. It got so slow. I even heard some like grad schools are changing their requirements because basically like a lot of people do their internships in their junior year, and in my junior year everything was closed off, so I couldn't really get any experience in my junior year. I'm hoping I can do volunteering this summer, but we'll see.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
And yeah, you're not. Yeah, we need to. That's the one thing, especially with TCA. We had been very social science heavy, but we do have some, you know, we do have one STEM person, Zaina Orales. So she's our STEM in the executive committee. So, and she has the same kind of, you know, concerns, you know, or I didn't say concerns, but, you know, like there's not enough talk about, you know, STEM fields and STEM majors. So we're going to definitely work on that and try to outreach with that in those fields and sectors.
Yeah, thank you. Because like, especially with COVID, they don't want extra people in the hospital and put people in danger. I mean, I have my vaccine, I'm fully vaccinated, but whenever I reach out, they're like, we are trying to keep the people at minimum amount of people inside the hospital. So I was very unlucky about that.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Yeah, I mean, also, I should say generally, everyone, you know, make sure if you're looking for something or know something, we are trying to have like especially our LinkedIn group, be able to be a resource for people to kind of look for things, but also advertise for things as well. So hopefully we might start pushing people to do that a little bit more in the group.
Do you all have a link for the LinkedIn?
Yes, it should be. I think Elif shared the screen, but and you can use the barcode there with the to you know, get all our social media outlets from there.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And last but not least, Nesrin Manav. Oh, she left. Well, again, thank you again for everyone for joining in, especially Meryem and Yenal and Andrew. Again, thank you for such a great event. And I think it'll be I can't wait to post this on our, you know, we also have our YouTube page, but just post it and kind of share this around. I won't keep in, you know, I know.
You're muted.
What part did you hear?
You said I don't want to keep everyone.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, not much to repeat there. I don't want to keep everyone. I know Iftar's coming up soon. So, but Andrew, did you want to, I don't know if anyone else wanted to add anything. Now's the time. But again, thank you, Meryem and Yenal, for coming on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I want to ask very quickly, because we're getting questions, and has there been anything that you are trying to do and that hasn't been fruitful so far, like, or have you run into any really big roadblocks during the application? In addition to what we already talked about, obviously, because of the COVID, but if there's anything specific that you'd like to talk about, we can also this side conversation thing. Like I said, I'm available on LinkedIn. I already got an invite from Midi actually. So definitely go ahead and find me on LinkedIn. My information is available. We can also talk on the site. I can try to give the best advice, or connect you with those who know a lot better than I do when it comes to HR related stuff. So yeah, don't hesitate. But I know it's challenging. Just hang in there. Also, we forget to mention, and I've been there before myself. It's difficult to find a job or internship, especially during times like these. Even during a regular time, it might be challenging. So don't forget to spend time for yourself. You know, your mental health, your physical health. Make sure you do the things that you're doing on a regular basis, whether it's listening to music, exercising, going out for a walk. Try to do those things. Now that the weather is getting better, it's really, really important. And Verizon is emphasizing this for their employees, actually, for those who are working from home. Obviously, it's a challenge to do that thing. So make sure that you take care of yourself first, because if you're not feeling well, if your head is cloudy, you can't think straight. So you're not going to be able to get anywhere. So take care of yourself first, and then you'll be able to get to accomplish your goals. But number one priority should be yourself.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to Yenal and Meryem. I thought this went really, really well. And also thank you for everyone for joining today. Hopefully we'll see you again at our next event. And yeah, also happy Ramadan as well for anyone who's partaking. And yeah, I thought, you know, this went really well. And, you know, if people want to connect, you know, that's what this is all about. So, you know, like we all said, you know, let's all connect on LinkedIn and, you know, keep this going.
Thank you all so much.